Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel here in kind of a different room at C2 Tactical in Scottsdale with my favorite defense attorney, Tim Forshey from Forshey Law. Look at that. You're the favorite.
That's weird. You know how hard it is not to just reach over and hold your hand? We're sitting in love seats. It's just so hard.
We're kind of like between two ferns thing going on here at this setup. And we had a video out of Brazil, or was it Brazil or was it Colombia? Anyways, that it was kind of a weird defensive encounter, okay? So dude is stealing a mirror off of somebody's car. He comes out, shoots several times at him with a pistol. And I'm like, that's not okay, friends. Well, we heard in the comments several times that there was some credible evidence that what it wasn't a handgun, but what is known as a traumatic pistol, a less lethal rubber bullet launcher, basically, that's fairly popular in some parts of the world where you can't find a gun. So I want to ask the attorney if that changes the calculus much.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
You know what's kind of funny, Tim? I actually own several of these.
Wow.
Because we're always looking for a way to do force on force well.
Sure.
And recently, the ATF put a kibosh on importing simunition rounds.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
last time I did force on force, we still use sims. So
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, in particular UTMs, they can't import them, and they're made in England, and so which is stupid and wrong and dumb.
That's a horrible trade partner.
So what we've kind of gone to is. HK and Umarex got into an agreement where basically it's like a fairly large rubber ball that's projected, that's propelled by CO2. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to get shot with one of those, and that's kind of force on force, right?
Sure.
You know, it's motivational.
It needs to hurt,
Yeah, it hurts. And so that's kind of what we're looking at here, a CO2-powered rubber bullet launcher.
I'll be candid, I'd never heard the term traumatic pistol. I've heard those two words in the same sentence many times, but I've never heard of a traumatic pistol. So I was learning as well.
From what I'm hearing, started in Russia, because in Russia it's very difficult to get a real firearm, so instead they get these ones that are kind of punitive. I'll make it painful enough for you to go away from me. And those have been imported to overseas into South America as well. We can get them here in the U.S. I worry, though, about using one and trying to claim it as less lethal force. So what are your thoughts?
Well, getting back to what you said originally, when I first saw the video, I thought, well, this guy came out and started shooting at somebody for stealing a mirror.
Yeah.
You know, which obviously would never be justified. And not to mention, even if you're in some weird jurisdiction where it is justified, perhaps Colombia, wow, is that stupid? I mean, you're literally starting a gunfight over a $700 repair to the side of your car. And from the looks of that car, it might have been worth $700, the whole car. So I just didn't understand it. And then I found, okay, wait, no, this is actually a less lethal. And I would caution people, a lot of people use the term non-lethal. And John and I have had, we sparred about pepper spray and stuff like that a couple times, and I would never say I'm right. I literally wouldn't. I'm dealing with one of the world's experts on this stuff. But I think it's important, and John would agree, that you don't call it non-lethal, you call it less lethal. Tasers.
Weird stuff happens.
Weird stuff happens. We saw a video a couple months ago where a guy got tased and fell right in the path of a semi-tractor truck going 80 miles an hour. Yeah, it turns out that was certainly lethal. So, so if you have a, I guess the classic example would be law enforcement. They're quelling a riot and they use rubber buckshot and they start firing rubber slugs or rubber buckshot into a crowd of people. That maims people all the time, very commonly. It'll take out big chunks of flesh. It'll take out eyeballs. It'll break jaws. It'll knock out teeth. That is considerable physical force, which can in fact be lethal. And unless you're law enforcement quelling a mob, that's probably going to be viewed as lethal force. So we talked earlier in a video about the eggshell thin plaintiff concept. If you hit somebody and they're susceptible to this more than the normal person, guess what? Your problem. Some lady has osteoporosis. You hit her in the face with a rubber bullet. It punctures her skull and she dies. Guess what? You bought that osteoporotic victim. So you got to be very careful in using this stuff. And I don't know why I guess my whole thought all along is I wouldn't use these types of force unless I was in fear for my life. And if I'm in fear for my life, I'm not going to use these types of force. Again, law enforcement, totally different. You're constantly putting yourselves in situations where you have to use escalating levels of force. You have to arrest the drunk guy who's threatening somebody with a baseball bat, right? As a civilian, I walk back, get a good vantage point, and watch the show while 911's responding, right? It's totally different for law enforcement. But for civilians, I mean, why you would ever charge out of your house and engage somebody. What? Okay, so I know I have a rubber bullet gun. How do I know the other guy doesn't have a real gun?
Right.
What are you
And
doing?
I introduce what looks like a real gun and start taking shots. It's a great way.
Perhaps even by an innocent civilian. I mean, a bystander, a would-be, a would-be good Samaritan decides, oh my gosh, there's some guy shooting at some guy in the street, and you get shot by blue on green. What are you doing? I mean, it just is a really bad idea.
Yeah, and I know Phoenix PD just recently took all their beanbag shotguns off the line.
Yeah.
Because what they were finding is that they had a tendency to run like bananas a little bit.
Yep.
And so they caught a couple guys where you're trying to get them in the guts, and instead they hit them in the chest, and now you've done great bodily injury to somebody.
Fracture a sternum, and now some cardiac arrest. Yeah, dangerous.
Bruising lungs, bruising hearts can send somebody into cardiac arrest and kill them dead. And so they're like, we're not going to do that anymore. And they still have their 40 mics, their 40 millimeter launchers, and they've really taken a liking recently to the pepper ball guns.
Yeah. The burners, those sorts of things.
Well, the big, hopper ones.
Oh, yeah.
And the paintball guns with pepper balls in them. And man, they just light people up with those things.
I'm never going to buy one of those because I know I would submit to the temptation to try it out.
Yeah, right.
My buddies are over. Hey, they walk through the door. Boom. I mean, I know I still have enough 14-year-old in me. I just couldn't withstand.
Put a big welt on somebody and then pepper.
I better not get one of those. Yeah.
No. So listen. I think that he said something important here.
That doesn't happen. Tell me what that was.
Well, and what he said was, listen, in this case, those traumatic pistols can do great bodily harm, right? So you hit somebody in the face with one of those. Even a strong person, if I put it in their eye, if I put it in their mouth, on their teeth, I break their nose, put them in the hospital. That's great bodily harm. Yeah. I admit them to the hospital. Now you whack them in the body. Okay, fine. You're gonna, put welts on people. That's not great bodily harm. Okay, but again, if I miss, I got trouble. If instead, but what if they're a deadly threat to me? Well, then I don't want to be shooting them with a ball, with a rubber ball. I want to be shooting them with actual jacketed hollow points. Because I face too great a threat to trust that the pain is going to do anything to them. Also, most of them that I've seen, the one that we just saw, looked real. And that puts me at big risk.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that I'm an expert on this, but I guess I've been hired as an expert, but it looked real to me. And if I'd have been a bystander, I would have thought this was a gunfight, and God knows what might have happened. Yeah.
Certainly looked real. In fact, it's funny, the Umarex VP9s that I got sent, they are dead ringers for real guns. And the first thing I said was, well, time to get some spray paint. Yeah,
every time you see one of these airsoft guns that the only way you can distinguish it from the real thing is that there's a little orange band around the muzzle. Wow, shoe polish, that's gone. So very scary stuff.
So for our force on force guns, nope, I need some blue, bright blue spray paint so that we can just spray paint the slides on these guns, and we know that these are not live pistols. Yep. And so I've seen a couple of these. Don't put these in your self-defense repertoire, right?
And I guess maybe it's one thing in Russia where that's all you can possibly obtain, but in Brazil, we don't know. Maybe the guy was a prohibited possessor in Brazil, but in Brazil, there's a lot of armed people in Brazil.
Yeah, there's a lot of
going around, choosing that option. I think that's a really, really dangerous
bad idea. I don't even like so there are companies that make a pepper ball gun, and it's a gun-shaped one. There are several companies that do. I'm not casting aspersions on any company, and I'm not going to name the companies, but you could Google them and probably find several of them. But I'm not a big fan of them because for private citizens, right? Because for a private citizen, if he's far enough away that I need to launch a pepper ball at him, I probably don't need to pepper him.
They're not sold that way, but they really are for crowd control for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And they're a great tool for that.
In a law enforcement context, I get it.
Yeah, for civilians, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, for private citizens, I'm like, I don't see a use case. My OC spray has a 12-foot range. That's probably where an eye poke in a can makes a lot of sense to me. If the guy's 30 feet away and if I bust him in the face, I'm going to put him in the hospital, and now we're talking problems. Not a big fan. Same thing with the traumatic pistols. So, Tim, thanks for the knowledge, man.
I don't know that I gave you much, but thanks for asking me. Yeah, thank you.